Hello, everyone. Welcome. Hopefully, that music put you in a little bit of the mood with all the snow that's outside. So, good afternoon. My name's Emily Damon, and welcome to Watertown Ford's third Charter Chat. I'm the chair of the steering committee for Watertown Ford. Watertown Ford is a community initiative that seeks to expand the number of voices in the charter review process through a series of events that are designed to educate, empower, and engage residents. Our charter chats are an opportunity to share your views and ideas about the charter review process. We hope that through events like this, the community members can get connected with others who are interested in town government and become more informed about the charter review process. So I wanted to begin by thanking everyone who was able to attend the last charter chat, or if you missed the last one or came to the first one, thank you for joining us. And I wanted to remind everyone that today's meeting is being recorded. So anyone who can't attend can view in at a later time. So today's agenda, we'll begin with a process and meeting guidelines, and we'll check in with who is here on the participants list. And then we'll spend some time hearing about the charter review update with a little Q&A session. Then we'll have a discussion around community values. And during this time, we'll have attendees choose your top 3 values that are important to you and why. And then we'll finally end with some ideas about future charter chats and get your feedback. So with that, I'd like to pass it on to Larry, who will give us an overview on the meeting process and guidelines. Larry?
Thanks, Emily. Hi, everyone. Glad you're with us today. Briefly for our meeting guidelines, there will be some time, a few sections during this afternoon for questions and answers and comments. And we'd encourage you to be mindful of your time when you're speaking so that everybody has a chance to be heard. We'd invite you also to be curious about what other people are saying and thinking and feeling. As Emily mentioned, you'll be muted at the start, but when we open it up, everybody will be unmuted. So we would ask you to mute yourself if you're not speaking, and use the chat function if you'd like to for any questions or comments. We're going to be monitoring the chat, and it might be possible to respond to you in real time, and it will also give us an opportunity to see some of the themes that are emerging in the chat that we may be able to respond to as a whole group. Again, you'll see who's with us today. We have over 20 people, which is great. And if those of you there may be some people on the phone, and we know you're going to be able to participate to some degree, but we won't be able to have you with us quite as fully as we'd like. So feel free to say your name if you're joining us by phone. So with that, I wanted to turn it over to Councillor Tony Palumba. Tony is a member of the Charter Review Committee, and he is going to give us an update about the meeting that they just had this Tuesday. We do have a summary information which available in print, which Tony will reference. And then after we've heard from Tony, we'll open it up for some questions that you may have by using the raised hand function in participants. So let's turn it over to Tony.
Thank you, Larry. Thank you, everybody, for attending. Let me just say that I'm going to, I cannot do justice to the meeting, but someone who has done a wonderful job for the last 2 meetings, and again this meeting, Marcy, with help from Vanna, have put together another very comprehensive charter review, and that's going to go. I think this is the charter review number 3. So and that's going to go into our into the chat, the way to link to it. So it's an excellent presentation about what happened. But I'll just simply say we had another lively meeting of the committee, the Charter Review Committee. We did have an agenda in front of us, which we're supposed to particularly look at legislative capacity and the balance of power between the legislative and the executive branches of our government. It actually was kicked off with a good presentation by Marcia Ciro, talking about what some of the themes around, but the themes that came out of her presentation, however, had mostly to do with transparency and accountability and responsiveness of the government to residents. This continues to be a theme throughout the last meeting, a few meetings that we've had of the committee. People seem to come back to that issue of is the government being responsive? Is the government, both in terms of the administration and the council, being responsive to people? Is there transparency on the part of the government and the council? And are we making ways, are we doing a good job of making ways for people to participate in town government? We spent a lot of time on that issue, and it was interesting for me anyway to note that a couple of the community members continued to come back to the issue of transparency and responsiveness. That was mentioned both by State Representatives John Hecht and Mr. Oates, who's a member, both of them are community members. So that theme of transparency, accountability, continued throughout this meeting also. We did not get to issues of values, a vision, which was also on our agenda, but we can come back. We will be continuing to do that, I'm sure, at other meetings. We did reach the conclusion that the next two meetings of the committee, which would be in January, the 1st and the 3rd Tuesday of January, will be dedicated to presentations by mayors, town councilors, city managers, and others who will talk about what they find as a successful way to do business. How are they effective? How are they efficient? How are they responsive to constituents? How are they increasing participation of their residents and their citizens in government? The same questions that we've been wrestling with, we can have an opportunity to speak to people who have been doing this, both from other communities. Our own town manager, I'm not sure which of those dates he will be present, but he will also be present to field questions and about how things work in Watertown. I do want to say one of the interesting pieces that came out was what can we do to increase the capacity of both the town councilors and the town manager to do their job? What is missing? What is missing so that they can do their job better? So let me just end also, we had and this would be often, I think will be all posted on the website, on the town's website under the committee, Charter Review Committee. We have asked the Collins Center for quite a bit of information. Each of us, it seemed like almost everybody on the committee had a request for additional information to be posted so that we could review that before we had these presentations by mayors, town managers, and town councilors. So keep an eye out on the website for on the town website under the Charter Review Committee for new resources, particularly resources around how other cities and towns are dealing with issues of efficiency, effectiveness, responsiveness, and transparency, and fifth, participation. So I think I'll end there, and if there's any questions, I'd be happy to talk about it, to answer them. I mean.
Okay, thanks, Tony, for that update. And we noticed in the chat that some people want to be able to read the summary that Marcy and Vanna have put together. And just to remind everybody, if you haven't seen it in the chat, that it's in the chat now, and it will also be on the website. We're cleaning up a couple things on the website and hope to have that ready in the next few days. So all of this good information will be readily available to the public. So with that, we'd like to just open it up for some questions and put in, if you go into participants and click on, raise your hand, then we'll be able to see who has a question and call on you. And I see that Rita, let's go over to you. Let's make sure you're unmuted and ask your question, and Tony hopefully will have an answer. Is Rita, can we get Rita unmuted? Emily, is everybody unmuted now and we're asking them to mute, or are they still muted, and we'll just unmute each person as they ask the question?
Okay.
Everyone should be allowed to unmute themselves now.
Yes.
Okay. All right. Hi, Rita. Go ahead, please.
Hi. I was wondering what the protocol, well, I have two questions. What's the protocol for a citizen to get resources from, say, Mike Collins? Would we go through somebody in the committee to ask a question?
Yeah, I think the appropriate way would be to ask Council President Sideris, who's chairing the committee, if you have a particular question. The Collins Center has been very responsive, but if a resident had something that we didn't ask about as committee members, I would suggest that you ask Council President Sideris at his email address that you'd like that, and he would be able to pass that on to the Collins Center.
Okay, and so this is related to who is going to be part of that representative group of mayors, town councils, or whatever that are coming in January? Because if it's the same kind of people that were on that charter list, which like from West, Bridgewater or Springfield, I'm like, these towns do not represent Watertown. Like, are we going to be getting people from Somerville, Arlington, Medford, Brighton, a more representative, diverse city-like community? Because like to have someone come in, even from Waltham, when I go into Waltham, it's not Watertown. So like to have the mayor of Waltham come in here and tell us what it's going to be like to have a mayor, it's not going to manifest in the same way. Waltham is a different animal. Yeah, and so is Newton, by the way.
Well, I would say, and again, this is on the website. I just happened to look at it today. There's a list of cities and towns. I'm sorry, cities, yeah. Like ours, that have 10,000 people, sort of within 10,000 population of us. And we're up about 36.9, I think. And so that there's a list of towns, cities and towns, and whether they have a mayor, whether they have a town manager. And you can comparison. I think that's a good point that you raise, Rita, and maybe we should pass that on through to Council President Sideris. I mean, if it comes from you, it's important. I mean, yeah. It's important that it comes from residents besides committee members. I don't know what the Collins Center has chosen, or who the Collins Center has chosen. So I think I'd pass that on.
Okay, and because I did see that list, but it doesn't have any racial demographics or generational demographics.
Right,
Yeah.
Yeah, it's mostly.
Okay, I will.
Thank you, Rita. That's a good point, to make sure there's diversity and some appropriate representation of different communities that are part of who we listen to and get their good ideas. I think, Jackie, your hand is up, so why don't you go next? Unmute yourself and ask your question or offer your comment.
Can you hear me? I think I'm on. Okay. I was questioning about the public seeing Marcy's summary, but I was wondering if people who may not know much about any of this going on, it's such a good way to present what we're grappling with as, residents. And I just wondered if there any thought to being able to have it be accessible. I don't know where people would go if they don't know about Watertown Forward.
Yeah, it's a good question. We've part of our work of our committee is to try to get the word out as best we can. I'm wondering, Nancy Hammett, who's the chair of the Outreach and Engagement Committee, Nancy, if you might want to offer a couple thoughts about that. And we're certainly welcome to people's ideas. But Nancy, are you unmuted?
I still have another question, but that's good.
Okay.
No, that's good. I'd like to hear the answer to that.
All right.
Okay, yeah, we are attempting as rapidly as we can to get the word out as widely as we can. We're planning a Facebook account. We're planning our website, which ought to be available soon. We have a growing list of people that are signed up for emails, and I think we're just getting going on kind of getting outside the usual methods of communicating with people to get out more broadly. And we're also, our education committee is working on developing material that will help people who really are not familiar with many of these issues, um, you know, get up to speed. So, and so we'll, through any of these means, we're going to be trying to make that summary available, the summaries of the previous.
We're having trouble hearing you, Nancy.
Oh,
Kind of going in and out. But let me just jump in and offer one
sorry.
other point about that, which is we do have a distribution list, kind of big. We send it out to contacts in various organizations in Watertown, who then send it out to their lists. So we're trying to do it in that way as well to get the word out. And Tony, I was wondering how many people, if you know, how many people attended the charter review committee
Oh,
meeting on Tuesday? Any
that's
idea?
That's a good question. You know, I was the participants versus the attendees. I believe the attendees were over 20 again. We've had a pretty, I believe it was about 25. We have a pretty good participation of attendees each of the last few meetings. I do want to say that eventually when our website is up and running, which won't be long, I think that people should share it as far and wide as they can, because you will see these recaps on that, will be posted there. I also want to say that the town council president has connected with the person who's been hired to take the minutes for, oh, I see that Leo Martin said that there were 17 attendees at our last meeting. Thank you. But he has connected with Ann Cordy, who's going to be the minute taker. She has a few meetings to catch up on. So minutes would be prepared by someone from the town and then posted. I do like, you know, if you get a chance to look over Vanda's and Marcy's and Vanda's piece, it's good. Marcy likes to divide it into sections that are very helpful. But again, the minutes will be posted, and Marcy's pieces will be posted on our own website.
Thanks, Tony. Jackie, I think you had a second question.
Yeah. I mean, reading Marcy's summary made me realize that the way that she worded the things that we're grappling with, I think without necessarily taking a position on how to solve it, is the kind of thing that the public could relate to, who may have, you know, less time or be drawn to this kind of work, but to realize that the impact of it and somehow to get that's how. And I would love to work with people on that, because I think how we presented it, you know, is important. Anyway.
Okay, well, there is an education committee, and be happy to have some more people join.
Yeah.
I'm looking to.
Okay, one more question, or one more just point. I thought Tony's summary was really spot on. I guess one thing that I didn't hear, which I thought was very important, was how do we measure success of our town? And I think that's something also that people can relate to, you know, financial stability, those things, but there are other ways that we want to commit ourselves to measuring success, and that has to do with our goals and mission, and that's another important message for people. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Okay. Is there anybody else right now who wants to put their hand up? Yes, Megan, I see your hand went up, so go ahead. Just unmute.
Yep. Thank you, Larry. So I was looking on the CRC site on the town website, and I see that the 6 non-council residents' names are listed there, which is great. I just have 2 questions about who serves on the CRC. So
I'm having some trouble hearing you, Megan. I don't know if other people are as well. Are you? Yes. There's a lot of echo and reverberation in your voice. So you might have to try something or speak real slowly. Maybe we can hear it better.
Okay. How does this sound?
A little better.
Is that better?
Yeah.
Okay, so I see that the 6 non-council residents are on the CRC website, but I don't see which council residents are on the CRC. And so I'm curious to know which council members are on the CRC, and also how were the non-council residents chosen? Was there an application process?
So all the council members, all 9 members of the council are also on the committee.
Okay.
And how were the community members selected? Was that the second question?
Yeah.
Yes, that was done through the town council president, put out a call for volunteers right before the pandemic hit. And he then took in applications or suggested and then interviewed folks, and he made the decision on who would be a member of the council, member of the committee, excuse me. So it's 6 members that he selected, and the 9 members of the council compose the CRC.
Okay, thank you.
Megan, if I can just respond, that question has come up a few times about what is the process and is it a good process, and could the process be improved in terms of who's on the public members and how many town councilors and so on. So that is something that if people have some opinions about and wanted to share that here or to Mark Sedaris or to the Charter Review Committee itself as an improvement for the future, that's an option. Okay, any other hands up for comments or questions before we move on to the next topic? Okay, looks like Janice, is there anything in the chat that we should be paying some attention to at this point?
So there are no direct questions, just some comments and thoughts about questions that were asked. So we can probably move forward.
Okay, so Emily, I think we can put up the next slide, or well, actually, it's going to be the poll, right?
Yep.
Okay, so let me, as Emily gets that up, let me just say that the next, our major topic for today is about values and good government. We've been pulling some feedback in from the Charter Review Committee meetings and the charter chats, trying to figure out what people want to pay some attention to. And so this topic for the next 30 minutes or so is on what we're calling values and good government. So we know that the charter is our constitution for how town government is organized and how town government operates. And our own vision for Watertown's future, really, if you step back, is based on our values. You know, what is most important to us as a community? What we'd all like to see in terms of our values to be reflected in how our town government does its work and serves us. So on the screen in a moment, you're going to see 6 values that have come up in the Charter Review Committee itself and in other conversations in the community. Tony mentioned a couple of them earlier. We wanted to make some time today to talk about the values that you believe need to be strengthened and need some further attention as the town goes through this charter review process. They could be stated as they are in some charters, in some official government documents, in something called a preamble. They could show up elsewhere and be referenced in the charter document itself. They help to inform how decisions are made about elements of the charter. So when we get to see all of the 6 values that you'll see momentarily, they all may be important to you. For today's discussion, we'd ask that you just pick your top 3, or if you can't do that, your top 4, and there's a space to write other, that you believe need to be strengthened in our town government and are an appropriate focus for the Charter Review Committee. After you've done your vote, we're then going to just see what we all collectively think about that. And then we're going to open it up for anybody's comments. I'll say more about how we're going to do it comments, questions, observations based on your own experience and so on. And you can talk about anyone you want once we've actually collected your feedback about it. So Emily, are we ready to put that up
Yep.
now? And
Yeah, I'll put it up and leave it up for a minute or two to give people a chance to read through and make your decision.
okay.
So,
And as you look at them, some people may have different opinions or understanding of what each of these things means, and that's okay. And we'll find out what we all think about these during our discussion time.
okay, those should be up. I'll cue up a little music while you all think about that.
And people choose them by clicking on them, or?
Yes, yeah, you just choose your top 3.
Okay. Emily, can you hear me?
Yeah.
A question came up in the chat about where you put your topic for other. Is there a way to do that? Does that go in the chat, or can it be put right in the poll?
Yeah, if we just maybe type it into the chat. Unfortunately, with Zoom, you can't type in what your other option is, but feel free to type it in the chat.
Thank you.
We'll know. And I'm just gonna give maybe 1 or 2 more minutes. We're still waiting on, we have 12 of 17 who have voted, so I'm gonna give people enough time to make their choices. Okay. Looks like we're missing 1 person. I want to give everyone opportunity before I close it out. Okay, I'm gonna give about 10 more seconds and then we'll wrap it up. Okay, here are the poll results. Can everyone see that? Oh, hold on. I have to share the results. Can you see that now?
Yes, yes.
Yes.
Yeah, I think
Okay.
so. Is there a way to keep it small on the screen while we go back to our seeing each other?
I don't think there is, but what I'm going to do is I'll drop I just took a screenshot of this. I can put it in the chat so everyone can have it up on their computer.
Okay. Thank you for that. So as someone pointed out in the chat, a lot of interrelation among these, and it looks like diversity, equity, inclusion, human rights is the highest at 81% of respondents. And then there's a cluster of transparency, accountability, responsiveness, communication, and public engagement that are all perhaps tightly connected. So what we'd like to do now is open this up for all of us to speak, comment, offer an observation. Ideally, when you do this, if you have an example or a personal experience or something grounded in your comments, that would be ideal. And we'd invite you to take up to about 2 minutes to offer your comments. And you can certainly comment if you have questions or you're curious about something that somebody else said. After about 1.5 minutes, if you want to take your 2 minutes, after about 1.5 minutes, Alice, who's part of our committee, is going to give you the 30-second alert, in which case we would then ask you to finish your thought or finish your sentence, and then we'll allow the next person to offer their comments as well.
Larry, could I interrupt for a second? Just if
Yeah,
somebody
please.
just wants to click on the word polls and the poll, you can move that frame anywhere you want on your screen.
Thank you for the tech support, Sue Ellen. Appreciate that. And we'll leave that to Emily. She's handling the polls and the slides today.
And you can also minimize it and then make it come back up.
Okay, so everybody can kind of reflect for a moment on anything you'd like to offer by way of why you selected those values of good government, and give us some reasons, or examples or some experience you've had and maybe some hopes, so we can get the conversation started. So any hands up? Okay, Chuck, you can unmute yourself. Go ahead.
Well, I chose diversity, equity, and inclusion, human rights because of what's been happening the last few weeks and the last 6 months here in town. There's a lot of things happening. So that to me was a obvious important item. But I also chose responsiveness and transparency. And my example for that is Joanne Hamill's garage. I mean, the garage behind Joanne Hamill's property was turned in kind of the undercover of night into a non-conforming structure that just really was outrageous. And it turned out it was done between, I guess, I don't want to be quoted on this because I can't be positive, but I think it was the town manager and other people in the government who were just doing these things. And it took a number of us, a number of people speaking at a town council meeting to bring that to light. And then once that happened, things changed.
Thank you, Chuck. Thanks for the example. Tiffany, I see your hand is up, and I think, Louise, you raised your hand. It might be easier if you just do the raise hand in participants so I can see a list of who's got their hands up. So if you go into participants, you should be able to click on it there, but we'll come back to you. Tiffany?
I didn't understand the situation that was just referenced, so I'm having a hard time tying in Chuck's reasons why he chose. But can I ask for 1 more minute for explanation, or should I just move on to my comment?
No, go ahead. Chuck, you want to just say how that relates to one of the items that you selected?
Yes, it's my understanding is that this was done not in line with, it was done in kind of behind the scenes and involved a neighbor for Joanne Hamill, who is a resident in town, and many of us know who's been involved in a number of different things in World and Watertown, having to go and seek out people and exert pressure before this all kind of came out openly. And as a result of that openness and things being exposed and out in the daylight, then all of a sudden things changed, and that property then was brought back into line so that it wasn't as I don't know if it was, Tony or others could probably say whether it was actually contravening local ordinances, but it certainly was contravening the spirits. And so a number of us spoke, and it turned things around. It's a small example, and I'm sure there are many more, more salient, perhaps more important. But to me, it was something that I saw personally that really made an impression on me.
Thank you, Chuck. Tiffany, go ahead.
I'm gonna pass. Sorry, Larry.
Okay. Looks like Rita, Louise, and then Rita.
I was also going to ask for a clarification of what Chuck was talking about, and I still am not clear what he's talking about, but I'll skip that for the moment. I chose the diversity, equity, human rights. I've lived here for 30-something years. Even at the beginning, there were a lot of people in town who were not, who were people of color or not your basic whatever. That came out weird, forgive me. And over the years, things have been changing demographically in the town. And yet one sees not one iota of that in the people that work in the town. So not the town council, not the town manager. We know the schools, and I know there are problems getting staff that are people of color, but the police. So across the board, and the library as well, although I know the library has tried also, but there's like a disconnect between who we know lives in the town and who we see represented in offices in the town. I also, even though it was 20 years ago, the dismissal of
30 seconds.
the idea of a human rights commission 20 years ago still is upsetting to me, that there was you know, a decision that we didn't have these problems here. Well, so that's why I'm very committed to this issue, as I'm glad to see many other folks are too.
Thank you, Louise. Rita, go ahead.
So I'm going to talk about one I put down, which was other, and I didn't know how to express this. It was like visionary, and I want Watertown to be modern. I want it to be in the future. And the example I can go back to is, well, the previous Charter Commission meeting that happened last week, where a few members of the town council were quite dismissive. Marcia had said that it was like an old boys club, and I would echo that, like, you know, that there's somebody behind the curtain running everything. So that doesn't indicate that we are living in any sort of modern democracy where the people's rights, the represented, are being listened to, because it kind of sounded like, oh, let's keep the old guard in so that we can invest. A lot of people had vested interests, and that clearly came out in that meeting, and I was shocked. I mean, some of the snarkiness and dismissiveness really ticked me off.
Okay, thank you, Rita, for sharing that perspective. Important to hear all these voices. I think Jackie, and then there was a question, Deb, somebody asked a question about where you find the raised hand in participants. Deb, did you get the answer to that, or is that still not working for you?
I found something in chat. Is that where it is?
Press the participants icon at the bottom, and then that opens a window. At the very bottom of that window, there's a whole series of icons, and the one at the left is blue with a hand. It says raise hand.
Yeah, okay.
But you have to click on participants at the bottom of your screen first.
Correct.
I did.
Okay, and then if you go scroll down the list to the bottom of the list.
Well, I see something say raise hands, but it doesn't seem.
Yeah, that's it.
Did it work?
And when you click on that, you won't see anything other than the hand next to your name in the list will be highlighted. There will be a hand next to your name in the list.
Okay.
Yeah, Deb, if we don't get it, we'll come. We'll call you. Okay, Jackie, I think your hand was up next. Go ahead, and then we'll go to Deb. And then
you asked for a couple examples. If we had examples of why I picked diversity, equity, inclusion, responsiveness, and accountability. From a few examples would be a couple children's librarians at the library have mentioned things that they hear that are going on in the schools that would make them not want to put their own kids in the Watertown schools. I had never heard that until a couple weeks ago. I've called town hall to get help for some of the ESL students that in the program I work at, Project Literacy at the Watertown Library. And I've gotten the response like, well, I'll do it for you, but you know, they don't want to help the immigrant. You know, so they'll help the immigrant because I asked. And one of the reasons was, well, why, if they qualified for free meal, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, people don't want to apply for that. They want to be able to, you know, support, and well, that's their problem and blah, blah, blah. And then, you know, well, I'll do it for you. So there was that kind of a cultural kind of disturbing response to our immigrant population. And then, as many people know, I've been working with a Watertown employee who was fired and had been racially harassed very seriously, and very disturbed by both. I mean, pleased at the support I got from some town council people, but very disturbed about the inability to do much about it and hold this manager accountable.
Thanks, Jackie.
So that has gotten me very much wanting to be part of the solution.
Okay, just wanted to encourage you just to finish your final thought, and we can come back to you again another time. Want to get some other people who have their hands up as well. I think Deb, go ahead. You, you were trying to get your hand up. Deb Peterson.
Okay, yes, thank you. So I'm coming from this point of view that, you know, to have outreach for this group, to have outreach and public engagement, you have to engage people. And so I'd like to see this question asked in a much wider context. You know, if you could get 1,000 people in town to answer the question about their values, that will engage them, I think, much more than sending them a whole lot of things to read or watch. And so in that context, it was, you know, what happens in this poll was responsiveness, transparency, accountability, and communication all group as if they're one thing. And I think they do hold together. And to me, there's a value that's sort of a higher value that that's expressing that, you know, if you were to do this poll again, I would say maybe couple those into one value and see if there are others to add. And that value is that town government values residents' experiences, recommendations, and situations. The situation now is that town government believes that they have the answers, that they know how to do things, that they're the professionals, and really over the years treat
30
public
seconds.
treat public input like it's a nuisance. And so valuing public input as, you know, helpful to their task rather than a nuisance is what I'd like to
Thank you.
propose.
It's a helpful perspective. Before we go over to Megan, I wanted to direct a question to Tony. I believe that the Charter Review Committee has set up a subcommittee on outreach to the community, an official one, in addition to us who are kind of unofficial. Could you say something, what you know about that, and if there's somebody else who knows more about or knows something about it, they could share it as well.
Sure, I apologize because I should have put that in the summary because it was, there is a communication committee. They had a quick update at the last meeting. The committee is made up of 3 members of the 3 of the resident members of the committee and town council Gannon. Those are it is chaired by Marcia Serro, member of who's a community member. They have a very aggressive and I would say demanding agenda to try to reach people through the usual ways that we have spoken about in terms of local media. They also want to do presentations at community organizations and community groups. They would like even to do something that I think is particularly challenging is they want to do a citywide drop, a townwide drop, drop a piece of literature in everybody's residents to talk about the charter. So they have a work cut out for themselves, but they're really committed to doing it. And they meet every 2 weeks. They're going to continue to meet every 2 weeks. So that's where that committee is.
Okay, thank you for that. We'll look forward to hearing more from them. Megan, you had your hand up earlier. Did it? Go ahead.
Yes, thanks, Larry. Can you still hear me?
Yeah.
Okay. So 2 things. One, I had a comment because I've been hearing it come up a couple times now that this idea of the council or the administration feeling like very unreachable, feeling like, you know, when citizens have an issue, we're treated like a nuisance. So one of the things that I think that if we want our town to actually be progressive and forward moving is we have to start with how the systems actually function. And this is going to seem a little bit funny probably, but the first thing I thought of when people were bringing up these issues is the idea of how at town council meetings, typically when we're not on Zoom, it's like the council's up there at their table and like we're back here and we're listening. And I've never liked that kind of separation. It always just felt to me, it was very intimidating because, you know, when I first started going to town meetings or committee meetings, I was just like, wow, this is so formal, you know? So I feel like if things weren't as formal and if things were more like how it is on Zoom, where we're kind of all having a discussion and talking, it would be a lot more approachable. So anyway, that was my comment there. In regards to what I voted for in the poll, I thought that we needed more transparency, accountability, and public engagement. So I realize there's a heck of a lot to keep track of in Watertown, and I totally commend
30
the
seconds.
the administration, the councils, the committee members for even being able to keep track and keep a hold of everything that happens in this town. I think it's not really dependent on how our government is structured that those transparency and communications lacking. I think it'd be more about the technology and platforms that organize the information, and how can we organize and share that information in a way where people feel like they can find that information and keep track of things easily.
Thank you, Megan. Appreciate that. We've got a couple more hands up, Marcy and then Sue Ellen, and then I'll invite Janice to jump in and share anything that may have been coming up in the chat. So Marcy?
Thank you. I chose, now I can't even remember what I chose, but my number one choice was the equity one. And I think it's important, it's already been mentioned, both Deborah and Rita have touched on this. There's a difference between what are called substantive values, which are all about purpose and what kind of community are we trying to create. In some measure, substantive values are prophetic. They have to do with where do we want to go? What kind of community do we want to create? A city on a hill. What does that look like? What does that mean? Those are substantive values, and that's what the equity, human rights, things like dignity and respect and freedom and liberty and faith and hope, compassion and care, fairness and justice. Those are substantive values. Getting there involves what are called procedural values of accountability, responsiveness, transparency. Donald Trump, if he shot somebody on Fifth Avenue, he could be totally transparent in doing that. But if there are no norms that say that's a bad thing to do, then he's being transparent, right? But in service to what? In service to what greater good, what ideal? So the idea of polling, I think, is a wonderful one. And I think that it ought to be accompanied by, if that
30
happens.
seconds.
Thank you, Alice. It ought to be accompanied by sort of a threshold question, which is, what kind of community do we want to create in Watertown, especially as we're going to be celebrating Watertown's 400th birthday in 10 years. And a lot of that has been stirred up by the different groups that are working now. And how we answer that question will help inform what evaluation, structure, process, people, all the rest of it. You know, it's really in service to this greater public interest set of priorities. Thank you.
Thanks very much, Marcy. Okay. Let's see. I think Sue Ellen, go ahead.
Me unmute. I was just thinking about Megan's comments about the feeling about the town meetings when you go to a hearing or whatever it is. I think it's kind of interesting that as the charter review goes on, and if people are evaluating whether the actual town meeting structure is something like what Belmont has or some other towns, where you have large numbers of people who are not town meeting members and show up and give their input and make decisions. My feeling is that I'd be curious to find out from people who are in towns that have town meeting styles, whether Zoom has actually been a huge advantage for a lot of people who wouldn't necessarily have been able to attend a town meeting. Folks who may be disabled, who may just not be able to get out, or so in some ways, it's kind of an interesting idea. I don't know whether people ultimately will think that style of government is helpful, but I think the idea that, yes, there are some positive aspects to having meetings on Zoom where that feeling is everyone's sort of equally on the screen And around the selection, I feel like the diversity and inclusion aspects of the Charter Review Committee can also be addressed. I think earlier in the meeting, people were saying if you have ideas about things that might be helpful,
30
to
seconds.
improve some. Thank you, Alice. Improve some of these things, that if Mark Sedaris wasn't the only one that the charter says can appoint all the community members, but there are, a small committee of people who do that, and in fact, actively initiating, looking for people who are more diverse, rather than just saying, oh, here's the word, here's the applications, and I'll just, process those. So that's another aspect I think would be really helpful to fix in the charter review.
Thank you, Sue Ellen. Janice, were there some things that came up in the chat that maybe we all haven't looked at that would be worth sharing with all of us?
There were no direct questions, but there were a few follow-up comments about what Chuck brought up earlier with the garage ordinance. And Vinny had shared some information about that. Let me just scroll up here. He said the town council voted a zoning amendment change to clarify the size of detached garages. I think there was still a little bit of confusion about what the scenario was, but what I gathered was that somebody had either changed, adapted, or built some sort of structure that was impeding upon Joanne's yard. And so I think Vinny was just trying to explain either what came of that, and then below Chuck also added a link to an article about the zoning controversy. So if people are interested in getting some clarity around that, and feel free to jump in, Chuck, and add anything else that you want at this point. But there was nothing else that really came up specifically. And there's some really thoughtful comments. And I just want to say that I appreciate people being very transparent during this call, and we welcome feelings during these chats. I think it's really important for us to use this opportunity to vent in a way that we can't necessarily do that during a CRC meeting. So I really appreciate people's passion, and I can feel, even though we're far away from each other, I can really feel some how people are feeling genuinely, whether that's happiness, frustration, anger. So I just want to thank everybody for really being vulnerable and open during these chats, because that's really what they're all about.
Thanks, Janice. I see, Tony, you have your hand up, and then we have just a couple more minutes for this part, and then we'll move to the next topic and start to wrap up. Tony?
I apologize. I still can't figure out the raise. For some reason, it's not there for me, but I do want to say that grouping that came together, transparency, accountability, responsiveness, communication / engagement, is something that has been number one on the discussions at the Charter Review Commission. So I just want to, as committee, I just want to emphasize how that everybody seems to be talking about that in a serious way. Whether it has anything to do with the structure of government is an open question, but whether we can do something regardless of the structure of government through the charter changes, that we should really be thinking about how to do that. And some ideas came up, but it is something that Leo Martin talked about, that John Heck talked about, that Mr. Oates talked about, as well as Marcia, and all the community members have talked about these 6 community members have talked about these issues. So that says something, that you're talking about it, the community members on the committee are talking about it. That says something about what needs to be done. How we do that is another question. And I just wanted to also, I'll stop there.
Okay, well, thank you, Tony. And the word's getting out, and people are talking about important things. There are several people from the Charter Review Committee who are on this Zoom call today. So that's all good that we're all talking about these things and hearing each other. The next part that we're going to move to now, which is to start to wrap up, which is we'd like to get your thoughts and feelings and opinions about this Charter Chat number 3 today. And we'd also like to get your thoughts about what would be some appropriate topics for the next Charter Chat. As you know, we do this on the Sunday after every Charter Review Committee meeting. So the next Charter Review Committee meeting is on Tuesday, January 5th. Our next Charter Chat would be then on Sunday, January 10th. So we would very much like your comments, your thoughts about today and what we might do next time we get together. I think, Emily, you're going to put up our final poll for today, right?
Yep. So if you could just really quickly rate today's charter chat on a scale of 1 to 5, 1 being poor, 5 being excellent, and you can read it right there. It'll give that to you. So give everyone a few minutes to answer this pretty quick.
And then we want to invite people just after that or at the same time to offer topics in the chat. Is that the plan?
Yes, definitely. If you have any suggestions or comments you want to add, feel free to type those into the chat. I'll give about 15 more seconds. Okay, I think we got most people here, so I'll share these results.
Okay, are we still getting inputs or is that it?
Oh, sorry, these are the results from the poll, and we do have a few comments in the chat as well.
Okay, so looks like things worked out reasonably well for most of us today. And Janice, I wonder if you could share some of what's coming in on the chat in terms of what would be good topics for the next time we meet.
I haven't had a chance to read through them all in order to do it justice. There's some more comments about really, soliciting and valuing input from the community versus just giving them information. So maybe some conversation around outreach and engagement specifically, and how we think what the best approach might be from the attendees' perspective. Accountability is still really important. And I think this came up last chat as well, but again here today, people were curious about when does the CRC actually start to make or start to propose changes to the charter, and how we might access that information in real time as it's happening. I think, Louise, were you talking about the poll? I think you're talking about the poll and the difference between mediocre and great. So maybe we'll give another area there next time, so there's more options for grading us. Let's see. Sorry, you're just watching me read these, guys. You can probably do the same thing at this point. But zone function due to security. Marcy's summaries, I want to echo that sentiment. Keep them coming. They're really, really helpful and supportive of the process and these chats. Thank you. It's very valuable for us. Integrating efforts. So normally what I do is I synthesize all of these comments, and I will create a list of some of your suggestions, and I'll put them in the notes for these charter chats, which will be available on the website. So just so you're not sitting here watching me read your comments, because there's a lot coming in, so I can't really get all of them and summarize.
Thanks, Janice. We won't put any more pressure on you. But we are trying as a group, as Watertown Forward, we are trying to be transparent and accountable and responsive. So hopefully we'll do our part in trying to have the culture here that we want. And we can always do better for our own diversity and equity and inclusion. So lots of things to pay attention to and try to do them well. Emily is going to take a couple minutes now to wrap up. She'll put up the last slide with just a reminder of some resources and where we're going next.
Great, yeah. Really quickly, Larry, I don't know if you saw Jackie's hand is up. I don't know if we want to
Oh, I'm sorry,
answer
Jack.
that really quickly before we wrap up.
Sure. Go
I
ahead,
just
Jack.
want to make a quick point that the summary included a link to the documents that Collins Center sent. And there was like this 114-page comparison of different towns. And I read a lot of it and I found it really educating. And it got me thinking differently about the relationship between the town council and town manager, and not thinking necessarily that the mayor was the right route, but not that that's the important thing, but just that it does frame things in a good way to think about, even though it's very lengthy. You know, I skimmed a lot, but I just wanted to let people know that it's a helpful way to frame the dilemma that we're in. Thank you.
Okay, thanks, Jackie. Emily, back to you.
Sounds great. Well, thank you so much, everyone, for attending again today. Everyone can see the upcoming events here. Slide. Perfect. Yeah, so first, just wanted to thank everyone for joining in on today's charter chat. We really hope that you can join us in a few weeks on Sunday, January 10th for our next charter chat. We also have there will also be an upcoming charter review committee meeting on Tuesday, January 5th at 6 p.m. So if you have any questions for Watertown Forward or want to provide us more feedback from today's event, please email us at forwardwatertown@gmail.com. And there you can also email us if you'd like to subscribe to our mailing list. We also are interested in, we're open for volunteers. So if you're interested in volunteering with Watertown Forward, we have two working groups, an outreach and engagement committee and an education committee. So if you're interested in volunteering with us, you can email us to sign up and learn more information about volunteer opportunities. So we hope you have a safe and happy holiday season and hope to see you in the new year.
Emily, may I just quickly jump in to say that, you know, our charter chat on the January 10th will include a part of the meeting will include a sort of Watertown government primer about how Watertown government is set up. So the education committee has taken on that responsibility. So on Sunday, January 10th, we will have at least 20 minutes to talk about how the Watertown government looks. So if you're is organized, how it is organized. So if you want to spread the word about that, that would be helpful.
Thank you so much, Tony. And just to let you all know, we are not redoing the year 2020. It will be in 2021. So
Looks like if I could just jump in there, I think we have a couple minutes and I see two hands have gone up, Jackie and Vinny, Councilor Piccirilli. So maybe we can, for those people who can hang in there for a little bit, if you have to go, fine. But we said we'd go till 4:15 and we have two more people. So Vinny, you first and then Jackie.
Sure, thank you. Well, a lot of great comments as usual. A lot of room for improvement. I do want to, just want to build on something that Tony said. You know, there's a lot of issues. You talked about accountability, transparency, and other matters. And then, the fact that we're, the whole issue of diversity, equity, inclusion, was a the hottest topic people wanted us to address. I just want to reiterate what I said at the last meeting, that the charter provides sort of like a high level structure to the Watertown government. The majority of what we do is with policy is done by ordinance, by resolution, or other things. So the issue, so we did vote on the November 27th Town Council meeting to task the Personnel and Town Organization Committee, which Caroline chairs, she's on this call, to study issues of diversity, equity, inclusion within town government. They're going to be holding their first meeting tomorrow at 7:30 by Zoom. So if you're interested in those topics, I would suggest that would be a good place to start. Things are great in Watertown. We all live here. We all love it. but it's not perfect and there's plenty of room for improvement. And it's really exciting to hear people's ideas. And certainly you can certainly send emails to any of the counselors with any ideas you have. We would love to hear from you. So, and I actually got 2 emails today. I got one from Jackie and you got one from Deb Peterson. So, which I haven't responded yet because I had to do Christmas shopping today. But we do want to hear from you. So don't be afraid, don't be shy to email us. Thank you.
Thank you, Vinny. Looks like the next hand up is Merle. So Merle?
I'm so impressed by the knowledge. We have a lot of people with deep professional experience in these issues on this meeting. And it seems, it seems like we're almost a parallel group to the commission. And how can we funnel the work that's done in this group straight into the commission? Thank you so much, Vinny and Tony and Carolyn and Leo, and if I missed any other members, for joining us. But how can we, I'd like to ask them, how can we bring some of this more into the official process?
Well, let me just quickly, I think we listen carefully at these meetings, and having being on the steering committee of Watertown Forward, I get the chance to help frame some of the discussion. But we take I think that what would be very helpful is for folks to start thinking about what they would like to see changed in the charter. Once we get past the challenging discussion around mayor versus town manager, which will happen, I'm sure, sometime in January, we are going to go deep into questions that people have been raising. For example, we can change how the charter committee is created. Who makes that decision? How many people should be on it? What kind of diversity should be required of it? So that is just one of the many things that we can discuss. We can talk about having an assistant town manager if we want. That is another thing that can be discussed if that's what we decide to do. I think that one of the things I was hoping that might come out of this meeting is people start thinking about a preamble that talks about the issues of equity and diversity, as well as responsiveness, efficiency, transparency, engagement, and effective government. You can put all those words into a preamble that may lend itself to providing some value statement to the committee. So it comes from you all, to be honest, in a lot of ways. We can have our own ideas, clearly, but we also can be the funnel of taking your ideas and putting it in front of the 15 people and say, make a decision on this, have a conversation on it, and think about this and come up with some solution to our decision. So the more people we get involved, and that's what Watertown Forward is trying to do, the more people that we can get involved, the more ideas we'll have. Nothing is untouchable in terms of this committee. The CRC can touch anything, can talk about and suggest anything around town government that is not determined by state law. Otherwise, it's open. I don't know if Caroline or Leo want to say something about how they think information is going to get to us, but that's my response to Merrill.
Okay, sounds good. It looks like Leo, you've got your hand up. Go ahead.
Well, I think the thing is, I think Tiffany asked how many people came to the last meeting, which was last week, and there were 17 people that were attendees. That means not participants. You have more today than we have at those meetings. So the way to get heard is to come to the meetings and let your voice be heard a little bit. That's how you get across to everybody else if you say what you're saying today at those meetings. So I think there's always a potential, I think, for open mic at these meetings. I believe, at least it has been so far, for comments. So I think if you just come, so we all hear your point of view.
Thank you, Leo. And as Tony said, we live and I'm thinking we live in a representative democracy. We're glad you're here too. So you're here and you can carry back anything that you think would be appropriate that was some of the messaging you heard today. And thanks again for coming. Any other comments as we wrap up? I don't see any blue hands up. So why don't we declare success? And thank you everyone for coming today. Emily, was there anything else you were saying at the end that you didn't get a chance to, or are we done?
No, I think we're all set. I'm just going to reshare this really quickly. So if anyone needs to see the next dates for the Charter Review Committee meeting, needs to jot that down in their calendar, or the next Charter Chat, or have access to our Gmail account, feel free to connect with us there. We'll be sending out reminders about the next Charter Chat come the new year. So thank you so much, everyone, and we hope that you have a great rest of your day and happy holidays.
Happy holidays to you too. Happy holidays. Thank you.